The only president to be unanimously elected was George Washington. He also refused to accept his presidential salary, which was $25,000 a year. Grover Cleveland was the only president in history to hold the job of a hangman. He was once the sheriff of the Erie County, New York, and twice had to spring the trap at hanging. The S in Harry S. Truman doesn't stand for anything, therefore there's no period after his middle initial. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams once traveled to Stratford-upon-Avon to visit Shakespeare's birthplace. While there, they took a knife to one of the Shakespeare's chairs so they could take home some wood chips as souvenirs. James Madison and Thomas Jefferson were once arrested together for taking a carriage ride in the countryside of Vermont on a Sunday, which violated the laws of that state. Andrew Johnson is the only tailor ever to be president. As president, he will typically stop by a tailor shop to say hello. He will wear only suits that he made himself. George Washington never lived in the White House. The Capitol was actually located in Philadelphia and other cities when Washington was president. He is also the only president who didn't represent a political party. James Abram Garfield is the first president to ever talk on the phone. When he spoke to Alexander Graham Bell, who was at the other end and 13 miles away, he said, "Please speak a little more slowly." Thomas Jefferson was the first president to be inaugurated in Washington, D.C. President Grover Cleveland is the only president to be elected 2 non-consecutive terms. He was the 22nd and 24th president. After President Bush Sr. vomited on a Japanese prime minister, a new word entered the Japanese language. Bushashuru means to do bush thing or to publicly vomit. Martin Van Buren was the first U.S. president to be born a United States citizen. All previous presidents were born British subjects. President Dwight Eisenhower was the only president to serve in both World War I and World War II. Richard Nixon was the first president to visit all 50 states and the first to visit China. He is the only president to resign. Jimmy Carter was the first president to be born in hospital. Jimmy Carter is the first known president to go on record as seeing UFO. Abraham Lincoln is the only U.S. president who is also a licensed bartender. He was co-owner of Berry and Lincoln, a saloon in Springfield, Illinois. Bill Clinton was the first U.S. Democratic president to win re-election since FDR. Herbert Hoover gave his White House servants strict orders to hide from him whenever he passed by. Those who failed were at the risk of being fired. Lyndon Baines Johnson affectionately called many women he slept with his harem. He even had a buzzer system installed that rang inside the Oval Office so the Secret Service could warn him when his wife was coming. When Martin Van Buren wrote his autobiography after serving as president from 1837-1841, he didn't mention his wife of 12 years, not even once. John Taylor had more children than any other president. He had 8 by his first wife and 7 by his second. He was 70 when his last child, Pearl, was born. James Madison was the shortest president of the United States, standing at only 5'4". He never weighed more than 100 pounds. George Washington made the shortest inauguration speech on record, 133 words and less than 2 minutes long. William Henry Harrison holds the record for the longest inauguration speech in history at 8,578 words long and 1 hour and 40 minutes. Unfortunately, he gave this speech during the bad weather, and months later he was dead from pneumonia, making it the shortest presidency on record. George Washington, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, James Garfield, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, William Taft, Warren Harding, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Lyndon Johnson, and Gerald Ford were all Masons, many symbols of which are found in American currency. The youngest president was Teddy Roosevelt, who became president at the age of 42 when McKinley was assassinated. JFK was the youngest president elected at the age of 43. 3 presidents died on July 4th: Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and James Monroe. Calvin Coolidge is the only president to have been born on the 4th July. George Herbert Walker Bush is the only president with 4 names. James Garfield could write Latin with one hand and Greek with the other hand simultaneously. Teddy bears were so named when Theodore Roosevelt refused to shoot a small bear one day. The incident was reported in the news, which was inspired a toy manufacturer to come out with the cute stuffed animals. Andrew Jackson was reportedly involved in over 100 duels, most to defend the honor of his wife, Rachel. He had a bullet in his chest from an 1806 duel, and another bullet in his arm from the barroom fight in 1813 with Missouri Senator Thomas Hart Benton. Abraham Lincoln was the first president to ever photograph it at his inauguration. In the photo, he is standing near the John Wilkes Booth, his future assassin. Robert Lincoln is the only man in the U.S. history known to have witnessed the assassination of 3 different presidents: his father, James Garfield, and William McKinley. Charles Guiteau shot James Garfield in the back with a 5-barrel 44 caliber pistol called the British Bulldog in 1881. He said he chose the gun because it will look good on a display in a museum someday. No one currently knows where the gun is. At 325 pounds, William Howard Taft, who was dubbed Big Bill, was the largest president in American history and often got stuck in the White House bathtub. His advisors had to sometimes pull him out. The first attempt to assassinate a president was on Andrew Jackson by Richard Lawrence, a house painter. Both of his guns misfired. Andrew Jackson then chased Lawrence with his walking stick. James Garfield didn't die from the gunshot wounds from his assassin's gun. He died of blood poisoning after doctors and experts tried to remove the bullet from his back with their dirty fingers and instruments, causing him to linger in pain for 80 days before dying. His assassin Charles Guiteau later claimed that he didn't kill the president, the doctors had. Woodrow Wilson would paint his golf balls black during the winter so he could continue playing in the snow. Thomas Jefferson was convinced that if he soaked his feet in a bucket of cold water every day, he'd never get a cold. George Washington didn't have enough money to get his own inauguration, so he had to borrow $600 from his neighbor. Washington, Jackson, Van Buren, Taylor, Fillmore, Lincoln, Johnson, Cleveland, and Truman did not attend college. Harry Truman is the only 20th century president without a college degree. No president has ever been an only child. Every so often, Calvin Coolidge will press all the buttons on the president's desk and hide and watch his staff run in. He will then pop out from behind the door and say that he was just seeing if everyone was working. The first president to be born outside the original 13 states was Lincoln. William McKinley, Grover Cleveland, and James Madison are on the $500, $1,000, and $5,000 bill, respectively. The bills are still used as legal tender, but no longer being printed. Abraham Lincoln was the first president to have a beard. Abraham Lincoln was also tallest president at 6'4". William McKinley was the first to ride in a self-propelled vehicle, the electric ambulance that took him to hospital after he had been shot. The presidential faces on Mount Rushmore are as high as the 5-story building, about 60 feet from chin to top of the head. The eyes are 4 feet across and mouths are 18 feet wide. The covering took 14 years from 1927 to 1941. The total cost was about $990,000. A total 450,000 tons of stone was removed. Warren Harding was the first president to own a radio, the first to make speech over the radio, and the first to write in his inauguration in a car. When women got the right to vote, he was the first president they could elect. Gerald Ford was the first person to be both vice president and president without being elected by the people. He was appointed vice president when Spiro Agnew resigned, and he succeeded to presidency when Nixon resigned. Andrew Johnson was the first president to be impeached. It will be another 131 years before another president, Bill Clinton, will be impeached.